of Parliament and those yet to make their way into the chamber this morning to do exactly that, to raise the quorum required for the House to commence business. This particular directive that is guiding the Speaker is pursuant to standing orders of the Senate on matters quorum. Allow me to take you through some of the highlights in the order of business this morning. Before the House officially commenced business this morning, I was taking you through some of the questions that the Cabinet Secretary, Professor Kithure Kindiki, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, will be required to answer to senators this morning. And the Senator for Marsabit County, Honorable Senator Mohamed Chute, will be asking the Cabinet Secretary for East African Community and arid and semi-arid lands and matters regional development to provide a list of the relief food distribution programs currently being run across the country, indicating the types of food being distributed as well as the quantity of the packages. Honorable Rebecca Miano will also be required to tell senators who are the suppliers of the relief food under these programs from 2017 to date, and could the Cabinet Secretary also state the amount paid to the respective suppliers as well as indicate the pending bills accrued, if any. The Cabinet Secretary will also be explaining the tendering process used to award the tenders and provide details of the type of food products procured and the price per unit in respect to the current programs. Honorable Moses Kuria, the Cabinet Secretary for Matters Trade and Investment, is also set to appear before Senate this morning. The Cabinet Secretary will be required to answer to senators the state as well as type and quantity of goods being imported by corporations and individuals pre-qualified by the Kenya National Training Corporation, popularly known as KNTC. Honorable Moses Kuria will also be telling senators in plenary this morning what is the procedure used by the Kenya National Trading Corporation in identifying and pre-qualifying companies which imported goods, and could the Cabinet Secretary state how many were awarded businesses, those currently importing goods, as well as indicate the type and packaging for these commodities being imported, and this is during the financial year 2021, 2022, as well as 2022 and 2023. Senators keep making their way into the chamber this morning to allow the senators raise the numbers this morning. The Senate has raised the quorum. Allow me to hand you for the live broadcast.
The Chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable Senators, if you look at the order paper, there are 4 questions that have been listed for response by the relevant CSS. Question number 11, questions number 12. Those 2 were directed to the CS Interior. However, we received a letter informing the Senate that the CS will not be present today for purposes of responding to these 2 questions. That letter was found unsatisfactory, and another letter was sent by the clerk to the office of the CS informing him that he has to be present today. Despite that letter, the CS is not present. And therefore, understanding Order 51D, where if a CS fails to appear for purposes of responding to these questions and does not give any satisfactory reason as to why they have failed to appear, then a motion of censure shall ensue. In this regard, this matter is going to be discussed during the special SBC tomorrow Thursday, and the Senate will be advised accordingly after this matter is discussed at the special SBC tomorrow. Now, that also applies to question number 15. Last night, we received a letter from the CS Investment and Trade indicating that he will not be able to appear before the Senate for purposes of responding to this question. Again, no satisfactory reason was contained in that particular letter, and therefore the same will be discussed during tomorrow's special SBC for purposes of invoking Standing Order 51D. Again, after the matter is discussed, the Senate will be advised accordingly. That therefore leaves us with only one question. That is question number 14. Clerk, is this? Kenya, are you raising a point of clarification? Because I do not see how the chair is out of order for you to bring him back to order. Proceed.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for guiding. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with you because the Cabinet Secretary Interior, for the purpose of question 11 and 12, we have rescheduled this question twice. And I want to agree with you that you did write letters yesterday, and that's why we are here. Mr. Speaker, I think the Cabinet Secretaries are not taking this House seriously. So I would recommend when you are dealing with this matter at SBC, Mr. Speaker, you must be firm so that we can invoke the Standing Order 51D. So, Mr. Speaker, I agree with you and I support your decision. Thank you.
The clerk, is the CS for East African Community and ASAL present? Can you usher them in the rightful place? Thank you. I'm informed that the CS in charge of East African Community and ASAL is present for purposes of responding to question number 14. Let me take this opportunity to welcome the CS to the Senate. Thank you so much, Madam CS, for honoring the invitation to come and answer the question that has been posed by the Honorable Senator from Marsabit. I will straight away proceed to request the Senator from Marsabit to ask the question.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much, Madam Cabinet Secretary. I have 3 questions to ask. A, could the Cabinet Secretary state the type and quantity of goods being imported by corporations? No, sorry. This is a wrong, sorry. This is a wrong question. If
Senator, you don't know your question.
Mr. Speaker, they are both mine, so it's a mix-up.
You are asking question number 014.
Yes, I got it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, Senator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I repeat now. Question A, could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of the relief food distribution programs currently being run across the country, indicating the types of food being distributed and the quantity of package? B, who are the suppliers of relief food under this program from 2017 to date? And could the Cabinet Secretary state the amount paid to the respective suppliers and indicate the pending bills accrued, if any? C, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the tendering process used to award the tenders and provide details of types of food products procured and the price per unit in respect of the current programs? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS, can you proceed to respond?
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker and honorable members. I'm glad to be here this morning to discuss matters that are important and appertain to our nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, for the purpose of clarity and for the sake of providing general context to the question by Senator Mohammed Said Chute of Marsabit County, allow me, and I wish to capture very briefly the scope of the ministry I serve as Cabinet Secretary. And the Ministry of East Africa Community, Arid and Semi-Arid Lands and Regional Development has two state departments, namely the State Department of East Africa Community and the State Department of Arid and Semi-Arid Lands and Regional Development. The matter in focus here today falls under the State Department of Arid and Semi-Arid Lands and Regional Development, and more specifically in the general realm of the ASALs and special programs. And Right Honorable Speaker, the Kenya's ASALs currently occupy landmass approximated at 85%. Some estimates place the percentage as high as 89%. What is not in doubt, however, is that even the most conservative estimates put the Kenya's ASALs at 80% of the entire territory, at the very least. This, by any standard, is a huge landmass that can no longer be accorded casual attention with regard to socio-economic planning. In recent years, driven by climate change-related reasons, and not regarded, the areas regarded as semi-arid lands have joined the League of ASALs, even if they were not ASALs before. And Honorable Speaker, at least 200 of Kenya's 290 constituencies are now either arid or semi-arid lands. And the ASALs are home to about 40, 70, and 90% of Kenya's human population, livestock, and wildlife, respectively.
Senator Boni, you cannot stand on a point of order when the CS is on her feet. You cannot. And CS, proceed, but please go straight to respond to the questions as asked. I have been listening attentively here, but you've not even started to respond to the questions. Kindly go straight to respond to the questions as asked by the Senator, please.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The Senator for Marsabit, Mohammed Said Chute, has asked the Cabinet Secretary for East Africa Community, ASALs, and Regional Development to provide a list of the relief food distribution programs currently run across the country, indicating the types of food being distributed and the quantity of package. The ministry runs relief programs through the National Drought Management Authority and the Directorate of Special Programs. The Directorate of Special Programs relief food interventions are categorized into two. Number one is the relief food distribution, and number two is the humanitarian emergency response. Under the relief food distribution, dry foodstuffs are provided to vulnerable households affected either by drought or other disasters. The food items are procured and distributed to households based on affected population, severity of the drought at the point of need, nutritional requirement, tracking distance, among others. And currently, the ministry is procuring rice and beans only. The prolonged drought affected maize production, thus creating scarcity in the market, while global geopolitics, especially the Russia-Ukraine conflict, affected the global supply chain for vegetable oil. For fortified food, the base raw material used is maize flour, whose production was severely affected by the prolonged drought. And according to the guidelines and procedures for the management of relief food distribution in Kenya, the following committees are responsible at various levels: the State Department for Relief Food Committee, County Steering Group Relief Food Committee, Sub-County Relief Food Committee, the Ward Relief Food Committee, Local Relief Food Committee, and Sub-Location Relief Committee, and finally, Village Relief Food Committee. And the following are the food items that are procured. Number one is rice that is packaged in 50 kg bags. Number two, beans, also packaged in 50 kg bags. Number three is maize, also in 50 kg bags. Number four, vegetable oil, which is a carton that contains 12 1-liter packaging. And finally, fortified food bales of 25 kgs each. But like I have said, we are currently only dealing with rice and beans. So that is the relief food program. The next program we have is the humanitarian emergency response. And this is non-food commodities that are provided to households affected by various disasters. The non-food commodities portfolio comprises mainly iron sheets, timber, ridges, nails assorted. We have mattresses, blankets, kitchen sets, jikos, gas lamps, tents and tarpaulins, soaps, and sanitary towels. And worth taking note of is that the ministry did not get an allocation for relief supplies in the current and now ending financial year. However, we requested for allocation as and when the need arises. Under the National Drought Management Authority, it supports non-food programs to mitigate the effects of drought through cash transfers and safety nets program. They also do water tracking and provision of livestock feeds. NDMA also coordinates relief food distribution by private sector-led initiatives and some development partner initiatives. The cash transfers are sourced from commercial banks. Water tracking services are mainly driven by community water users associations, while livestock feeds are competitively sourced locally through open tendering process. Honorable Speaker, we have provided finer details in the appendices of all the programs that have been in place, and they are available as appendices. On question number B, the question is, who are the suppliers of relief food under these programs from 2017 to date? And could the Cabinet Secretary state the amount paid to the respective suppliers and indicate the pending bills accrued, if any? Honorable Speaker, regarding the period spanning 2017 to October 2021 and also October to January 2023, this particular query was redirected to the State Department for Devolution and the State Department for Social Protection and Senior Affairs for competent adjudication and response, because this function was only transferred to my ministry through the Executive Order number 1 of January 2023, and we have only handled this function for the last 5 months or so. Honorable Speaker, the ministry did not then inherit any pending bills as far as relief supply is concerned, while payments to the current suppliers for the 5 months is ongoing because delivery and supplies continue. We have, however, provided a list in the appendix of the suppliers that are sourced through the supply branch. On question number C, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the tendering process used to award the tenders and provide details of the types of food products procured and the price per unit in respect of the current programs? Mr. Speaker, sir, the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, through the State Department of Public Works, that is Supplies Branch Department, pre-qualifies contractors for supplies of goods and services to various government ministries, departments, and agencies every 2 years or as and when it is necessary. The Ministry of EAC, their SALS and Regional Development uses the list of pre-qualified contractors to identify appropriate suppliers for various commodities for the relief programs. The Supplies Branch Agreement referenced as a contract number 53 of 8 that was dated January 2023 was issued, and the details of the framework contracts of supply and delivery of dry foods is also attached, and it has about 400 or so providers. The procurement and relief food and humanitarian emergency response commodities are based on the provision of Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015 and as guided by the supply branch. The types of food products that were procured from January to May, when this department was in my docket, was rice, Sindano grade, of 50 kgs, and the cost in January was 7,250. The beans, various types, packaged in 50 kg bags, and the price was 7,500. Maize, we did not purchase, and also vegetable oils and other fortified foods. In terms of the tendering process, in accordance with the provisions of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act and the aforementioned circular from Supply Branch, the State Department for Asals and Regional Development adopted the contract framework. The ministry also utilizes provided tendering procedures and methods for sourcing relief food, and the methods are open tendering, restricted, direct, request for proposal, and requests for quotation. As noted, Kenya experienced the worst drought in 40 years, and the biting drought rendered many people food insecure, and there was urgent need of relief assistance. So with that in mind, and with limited resources, we looked at the market and the prices that were set by the supplies branch, and we managed to bring down the cost, the delivery cost, and therefore we managed to get some rice at 4,500 per 50 kg bag, compared to the 7,250. We also managed to get the second lot of the rice at 5,250 compared to the initial 7,250. And for the beans, because of the scarcity, we were only able to bring it down to 7,300 from the initial 7,500. I submit, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Honorable CS. Honorable Senator Chute, understanding Order 51C7A, you have an opportunity to ask 2 supplementary questions. You may elect to ask one and then be the very last senator to ask the second question. If you've been responded to satisfactorily, you may not even elect to ask any question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask one question first, and then the other one at the last of the session. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank the CS, first of all, for having the courage to reduce the price from 7,200 for rice 50 kg to 4,500. And also the beans from 7,500 to 7,300. I think she should work on the beans and see if she can get at a lesser price. But then my question goes to the, Madam CS. The documents we have here before this Honorable House is from KNTC, and it shows that they've supplied or they've imported rice and edible oil. Did you contact KNTC to see if you can get a better price? If yes, how much are they selling at? Thank you.
Honorable CS.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and honorable members. I wish to confirm that we did contact KNTC, and the price we got for rice and the beans was slightly higher. The rice was, I don't have the actual figures, but I can firmly confirm that the prices were slightly higher. Thank you.
Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to thank CS on her elaborate response to the question asked by Senator Chute. And I must thank Senator Chute for bringing this statement. My question, Mr. Speaker, number one, CS, the food is actually dumped at the DC's headquarters. And the procedure that has been there before, there must be a budgetary allocation to ensure that the food reaches the communities. But unfortunately, over the years, and I think I had followed it up with a special program before it was handed over to you, we have about 4 or 5 months that you have not provided allocation of the budget to the DCCs. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I remember there was a time views were collected on the ground where instead of giving food to individuals, you give cash transfer. And that is better transparent and better useful to the communities affected. Why can't you use cash transfer as a government instead of providing food that doesn't even reach people? Especially the beans, it takes even 3-4 hours to ripe. Mr. Speaker, I would request CS, can you get a better beans for the communities instead of using the current supplier? I thank you.
Honorable CS, can you proceed to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'll take the question by Honorable Fatma, and this is in regard to the last mile arrangement for relief food distribution. And this is normally through the county steering group that is co-chaired by the county commissioner and the governor, with membership from Ministry of Interior and other stakeholders. But specifically on the transport, we have given an appendix starting from February to show that the arid counties then received an AIE of 200,000. The semi-arid received 100,000 per sub-county, and the non-ASAL, non-traditional ASALs that were affected got an AIE of 50,000. And we continue to perfect this to ensure that by the time the food arrives at the last mile or at the sub-county, that amount is available because it is for distribution and transport. So from February to May, I have the data to show that we are matching the food distribution and the amount for transport. But in regard to your second question on cash transfer, I couldn't agree with you more. I do agree that cash transfers are efficient, effective, dignified, and we do have that under the National Drought Management Authority, that is the Hunger Safety Net Program, and World Food Program, and some of the development partners already have that program. I wish to assure you that this is work in progress, so that going forward, we reduce as much as possible the relief food distribution and revert to cash transfer, which gives households convenience, dignity, and variety. And we shall give this, the technical teams, we will give them the urgency and the importance that this assignment requires. And I will be glad to update the House at the appropriate time the progress made towards achieving much more of cash transfers than relief food distribution. I submit, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Seki.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity, and I want to appreciate the Cabinet Secretary. I want to ask a question in regards to question 2 on supply of relief food under this program, as asked by Senator Chute. I look at the response as Cabinet Secretary, and I see it is not really satisfactory, because you took over and we need to have a list of suppliers, because during the period between December and even January, February, up to almost April, that is the time we were in the peak of supplies of food, relief food, to counties by your department. And I look forward to see the list of supplies as asked by the Senator, because your ministry was supplying food, and that is the time we had a
Senator,
very drought.
what is your question, Senator?
We had
proceed to ask your question.
I want to request the Cabinet Secretary to give us a list of suppliers of this relief food during the period of between February to almost May, because that was the peak of the drought in your ministry. Thank you.
Honorable CS. The question is, could you provide a list of those suppliers, especially for that period when drought was at its peak?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The contracts are still ongoing, supplies are still ongoing, but I have the list here. We'll submit. Yeah.
What is your point of order, Senator Dulo? And I hope you're not raising a point of order against the CS, because that you cannot do.
No, it's, Mr. Speaker, it's one part of my question she didn't answer, the one on beans. Thank you.
Thank you. As you respond to the question from Senator Cheptumo, Honorable CS will also kindly shed light on why you're supplying beans that take 4 to 5 hours to cook. That was the, was that the question? That was your concern, Senator Fatuma? Good. Senator Cheptumo.
Let me, Mr. Speaker, thank the CS for the comprehensive answer to the questions raised by Senator Chute. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the fact that the ministry does good supplies to the various counties of the relief foods. But, Mr. Speaker, the challenge that we have, and I have witnessed myself, having been the former member of Parliament, Baringo North, is that there is a challenge of these supplies reaching the targeted population. From the county headquarters to the sub-counties, some of these supplies, Mr. Speaker, disappear somewhere, somehow. I wanted to know from the minister or the CS, what measures have you put in place to ensure that the food supplies actually reaches the targeted people, so that you avoid these middle people who sometimes, Mr. Speaker, the DCs, the DOs, and the chiefs sometimes divert these supplies to other beneficiaries. What measures, Madam CS, have you put in place to ensure that the targeted communities are actually filled with the food? Finally, Chair, Speaker.
Senator Cheptumo.
Is related.
Understanding Order 51C7B.
Okay, Chair. Oh, okay, Speaker. It's okay. It's okay. Okay.
Honorable CS, kindly proceed to respond to Senator Cheptumo's question, as you also respond to an earlier question by Senator Dula. Proceed, kindly.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In regard to the question by Honorable Fatuma, that is in regard to beans. Honorable Speaker, we haven't received a complaint about the beans for now, and also noting that maize that takes longer we haven't distributed right now. However, I want to focus on the future outlook, and I would wish to say that we will continue on working on cash transfers so that communities and vulnerable people can then sample what else is easier to cook and available in the market, and also undertake a survey on the alternative relief food or dry foods that may have the same protein and may be available. And so we would like to take that away and have a suggestion and see what alternative protein would be available. In regard to the question, in response to the question by Honorable Cheptumo about the last miles, we use the county steering groups to target the affected and vulnerable population, following the reports by the National Drought Management Authority. And then these groups that are co-chaired by the county commissioners and the governor, and memberships from the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, the county government, Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock, Ministry of Health. This committee has multi-sectoral participants who target. And then in terms of distribution, when we allocate relief food, we write to the county commissioner, we copy all the leaders, elected leaders and administration leaders, and this is to ensure higher accountability, and so that we have enough people participating and getting the documentation and also witnessing this distribution. We would like to perfect this further, and as a ministry, being the accounting ministry, we had made a proposal to have officers that are based on the ground, but that is work in progress, and the Public Service Commission is still considering our request. But Mr. Speaker, we want to assure you that the message we have is of high accountability, and to ensure that the relief food gets to the right people and to the last person who is vulnerable and is deserving of this relief food. And we will continue to follow up and take the responsibility with the seriousness it deserves. I submit, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Aaron Cheriot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to laud the Cabinet Secretary for her diligence, and just note the communication that you gave earlier. Something curious to note, Mr. Speaker, is that the Cabinet Secretaries who have not previously served in Parliament with us are more responsive to calls to this House than our colleagues who used to be there. And it's rather embarrassing of our former colleagues who treat this House with not so much decency. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Cabinet Secretary is that the Commission for Revenue Allocation, 3 or 4 years ago, updated government records on the classification of arid and semi-arid areas. Previously, as you know, Mr. Speaker, arid and semi-arid areas were large geographical areas, perhaps you'd say to the north of the country and certain parts of the country. However, CRA commissioned a study and classified and divided the country into wards, which is a well-known administrative units in the country that pass the test of what you'd classify them as arid and semi-arid areas. I continue to see ministries, unfortunately, including her ministry, who still stick with what was a former classification of what will be arid and semi-arid areas, and therefore even in the distribution of relief food, share it only with the traditional arid areas. When is the cabinet secretary going to update the records of her ministry so that you find a county like Meru, where my neighbor here comes from, they have very fertile parts of the county, that's given. But then if you go upwards to the areas that they border like Kipia, those are definitely very arid parts. The same can be said of my own county, Mr. Speaker. So I want to find out and know from the cabinet secretary when her ministry will update this information so that food distribution and relief and drought mitigation programs can reflect the new definitions that have been issued by Commission for Revenue Allocation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS.
Thank you once more, Honorable Speaker. And the question by Senator Cheruiyot. I would like to start by saying the original classification of the arid and semi-arid counties or lands was done by CALRO, the Research, Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization, among other stakeholders, and that is the classification that has been there. We also note the classification by the Revenue Allocation Commission. I would wish to state that during the drought that we have just had, we went out of the classification and looked at the practical data of the counties and the people who were affected by drought. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to confirm that we had 9 non-ASAL counties whose wards, about 45 wards, were affected, and there were pockets that were affected by the drought, but they were not in the classification by CALRO or CRA, but we used contemporary data and contemporary occurrences that we saw. Mr. Speaker, sir, the data we have shows that we distributed food in all corners that were affected. Going forward, we will work with CALRO, the Commission of Revenue Allocation, so that looking at the effects of climate change, the lessons we have learned during the devastating drought, we can get new classifications, updated classifications, so that as we work on programs, sustainable programs for ending drought emergencies and for sustainability in the arid and semi-arid lands, we are then using contemporary classification. And Mr. Speaker, the drought we have suffered is the worst in 40 years, and we have a lot of valuable lessons learned, and we do believe, because of the climate change, this will recur, and we need, from now going forward, from day one, to start preparing for any future occurrence and avoiding some of the emergencies that we got into. So I want to assure Senator Cheruiyot that we are already on course and we were not restricted by the classification that was on record during the drought. I submit.
Senator Kinyua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to join my colleagues in thanking the CS for coming. Mr. Speaker, it beats logic because most of the time when I look at the news, you will see some areas of the Azores areas, people are suffering from hunger. But on the same breath, Mr. Speaker, you look at other parts of this country. For example, you look at Osingishu, look at some parts of Laikipia. People have bumper harvest. What I'm asking, Mr. Speaker, or what I'm encouraging the Cabinet Secretary, why don't we buy locally instead of having this rice being imported? And we have our farmers in Moya who keeps on complaining about the low prices, Mr. Speaker. You go to Osingishu, the same thing, Mr. Speaker, the prices of maize. You come to Laikipia, we can provide protein from our animals, then we can have canned meat. And that, Mr. Speaker, the prices that we are getting would be less and will provide more food to our people. Mr. Speaker, I want to confirm that the Cabinet Secretary, the way she's answering questions, she has given details. I want to confirm she's the daughter of Laikipia, and we are proud of her. Thank you.
Honorable CS, proceed to respond to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, Senator Kenywa has said that some areas produce more food while other areas have a shortage, which is true. But during the drought, this last drought and the very worst drought, Kenya was a net importer of food, and especially rice and beans and other commodities. We are net importers. But back to his point, there is work that needs to be done by multi-sectoral players, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Water, various government and non-state actors, to come up with county food balance sheets and come up with an exercise that will even bring back reserve food quantities so that in future that food can be stored, that food can be available, and that we can manage the shortages in some counties by getting from other counties. And I will also say again, that is an assignment worth taking by the multi-sectoral players in this food security sector, where my ministry is also involved and also very interested in the outcome of such an exercise. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mugu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I congratulate the Cabinet Secretary for the way she is handling the questions. My question is, in counties such as West Pokot, Turkana, and the others, during the times of disturbances such as cattle rustling and so on, there is a lot of shifting from area to area. And in the process of that, a lot of school-going children are mislocated or go without food and so on. What intercepting measures can the ministry take on such issues? Thank you.
Honorable CS.
Honorable Speaker and honorable members, during the drought, we also had counties that experienced insecurity, and those counties were then classified as operational counties. We continued to provide relief food under the guidance of the ministry.
Majority Leader, just hold on, CS. Majority Leader, you're out of order. You cannot just cross from one side to the other. You know exactly. You go to the line, bow, and take a seat. So you'll get your first question of the day. Proceed, CS.
So the operational areas, we continued to provide relief food, guided by the security team, and even the delivery was supervised by the security. For the school-going children that were affected, I am aware that we have a school feeding program under the Ministry of Education, but my State Department has complemented and supplemented that work. And Mr. Speaker, just this week, I think on Monday, we had a meeting to discuss the same issue, how to support the school children that are affected by the peace operations and the lack of security. More importantly, we are aware some of this insecurity is just competition for limited resources, lack of development. And again, we need multi-sectoral teams to work on how to spur development and provision of resources. Just today, I have shared in the newspaper, one of the newspapers, my article on reimagining peace in the arid and semi-arid lands that is co-authored with the Interior team. And we would, going forward as a country, and even in line with the manifesto and the plan, just taking development to all corners of the world, of the land, all corners of Kenya, so that the arid and semi-arid lands that are more known for lack of peace are then promoted to the same level of development as the rest of the country. And I do believe issues of insecurity, other challenges that are encountered for lack of resources and development will either be minimized or eradicated altogether. Again, it's exciting to work in this ministry and participate in some of these discussions and strategies, because it is life-changing and impactful when we see some of these issues being resolved and removing the hassles from where they are seen as areas that lack water, that lack peace, that lack security, that lack development, to areas that are contributing significantly to the development of this country, and the Kenyan people in the arid and semi-arid lands can enjoy the same level of development and peace that some of the other parts of the country do enjoy. I thank you.
Senator Matinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Let me also start by thanking the Madam CS for ably responding to all the questions. My question would be, Mr. Speaker, sir, this having been a drought that was the worst in the last 40 years, what is the ministry doing in order to ensure that we develop strategic reserves, that we develop post-harvest management issues, so that we do not lose a lot of food when we have bumper harvest only a couple of years down the line to use a lot of money to mitigate the drought measures? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In response to Honorable Wamatinga, what you have said is really true. We need strategic reserves. The Ministry of Agriculture, I am aware, I've seen their documentation, their strategies, and we are following up with them to implement the strategies. We are giving the data. We are giving, being the ministry in charge of policy for their SALs, we are sharing the policies, our strategic plans, we are sharing data so that it can be an input not only to the Ministry of Agriculture, but to all the other ministries, because the ASALs every ministry has one or two things to do in regard to the ASALs. The Ministry of Water and Irrigation, I attended the launch of their strategy. I saw their plans on water harvesting, the shift from rain-fed agriculture to irrigation. And so we would like to follow up with the ministries, and we continue this discussion so that we have strategic food reserves. And next time there is a drought, in the years to come, it will be much better than what we experienced in the latest drought. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Lomenan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I congratulate Madam CS. My question, Mr. Speaker, I come from the farthest corner of this country, areas like Kibich, areas like Kapedo. So my question is, how do the ministry ensure those rural areas that do have the problem of infrastructure consider to make sure they have received food? What I know, the food leaves from Nairobi to counties, sub-counties. When it reaches to the sub-county, it takes time. And I'm very sure more than 6 months, more than 3 months to reach to those rural areas. And the reason for that is because when you ask the county commissioner, he tells you he has not been facilitated. What Madam CS has said, 200,000 for the ASAL areas. That funds is not enough because to transport food from here, even to Kapengura, to Lodwar, is worth more than that 200,000. So what happens when it reaches to the headquarters of the sub-county? It ends there. They wait, what they do, they sell that food again to facilitate themselves to reach the areas of where it's supposed to reach. So what plans do you have to ensure the most vulnerable people from rural areas receive this food instead of targeting people from just the headquarters in towns?
Honorable CS.
Honorable Speaker and also Honorable Lomenan, I would like to confirm that during the drought, I managed to go to Turkana 4 times, to the most interior part, and even for relief food distribution. We have transport arrangements. We get escorts from KDF and the other authorities. And lately, we are also using government vehicles. But I would like to clarify about the 200,000. The 200,000 is for fuel for the sub-county level, not for the transport in totality per county or per area. So that is to ensure that the food reaches where it's supposed to be. You mentioned that probably food is sold to get funds for transport. I haven't experienced that in the 5 months that I have handled this assignment. Maybe there would be need to segregate maybe historical issues if they were there. But for the last 5 months, I have seen smooth transportation of food, and we use all means that we can to ensure that food reaches to the innermost parts of the country and of the counties that are affected. We work very closely with the Ministry of Interior and the Ngao officers. But like I said before, work in progress, always improving, always making it better, and that is the mindset we are having as a state department. But of course, if there is infrastructure development in these counties in the long run, the challenges we are having of transport, other challenges, will be minimized and eradicated eventually. So it is a good future to look at or to anticipate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Lelegwe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the response, the comprehensive response from the Cabinet Secretary, both for the primary questions and the four supplementary questions being asked at the floor. Mr. Speaker, we all agree that this was the worst drought as reported in the last 40 years. But I've heard the Cabinet Secretary say that the people who were affected, meaning that the impact or the effects of the drought is over. But I cannot agree with that because with the pastoralists or the livestock-dependent communities of Kenya are still affected by this drought. One, because of the depleted numbers of their livestock, which they depend on, and also these livestock are still weak. So my question to the Cabinet Secretary is, what measures is the Cabinet Secretary considering to ensure constant supply of emergency relief aid for these communities in ASAL areas that are still affected despite the rains, which have not changed the situation in Kenya or in these communities that depend on livestock? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Sears.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll respond to the question by Honorable Alawe. It is true that Kenya has experienced the worst drought. It is also true that the effects of the drought are not over. It takes quite a long time to recover from such a drought. Following the rains that we have had, we have seen slight improvement. We have seen the vegetation regenerating, giving quite a bit of feed to the livestock, water available, but the effects of the drought are still with us. And if we receive enough rain, it will still take probably even more than 6 months to get the much needed relief. So despite the little improvement or the improvement that we have seen from the rains, which we thank God for, I want to confirm that the relief food program is still on, and there is constant relief food distribution, including currently, even as we sit here, and we will continue to support the communities that require the support until we get significant recovery. We do not have enough funds, but with the little funds or the funds available, the National Drought Management Authority has had several strategies to support recovery, restocking to some of the worst hit areas that lost almost an entire livestock, and that is ongoing with support from some of the development partners, and we continue to support in regard to the relief food. And we are also spending a significant amount of our time looking at sustainable ways of managing droughts or ending droughts. And we have a whole activity and discussions that are going on. We have support from development partners. And I want to assure the honorable member that the program is still on and recovery is not yet complete. Thank you.
Senator Mgatana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in acknowledging the thoroughness of this particular cabinet secretary. It has inspired confidence that we got the right person amongst the Kenyans who are listening, including myself. So keep it up. And I also want to acknowledge our very own son from Tana River, the permanent secretary. I see him there. I know he's part of the team that are producing good caliber work that we are proud of. Mr. Speaker, my question to the PS, to the CS, is whether they have planned for future droughts, because the drought cycle in Tana River County, and I dare say the rest of Kenya, is predictable. So we want to know whether they have done some forward thinking to mitigate the effects of that drought. I have in mind, Mr. Speaker, whether the ministry has planned for, say, procurement of the bells of grass that is useful and good food for animals during drought, whether they have thought, and I'm particularly speaking of Tana River County, because that's where animals from Marsabit, animals from Isiolo, they come during the drought season. So whether the ministry has done forward planning so that we have these bells of grass that can sustain livestock during the difficult times. That is on the side of livestock, because I've not had much on that side, but also on the human side, whether they have planned to secure food reserves for the people so that we don't have embarrassing situations like Kenyans dying of lack of food. I'm speaking for my county and by extension to the rest of the nation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable CS.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Senator Mungatana. Compliments are rare, but appreciated. I want to say that one of the documents we are working on is a strategy called Ending Drought Emergencies Strategy, and this is the second phase. We had one that just expired in December, and in this strategy, we are focusing on resilience building, coming up with strategies, programs, and projects that in future will alleviate droughts. Because, Mr. Speaker, with the climate change and the devastating effects of climate change, droughts are not getting better. Lands are not getting better, and the climate, it's only planning that can get better. And we are hoping to launch by 1st of July the Ending Drought Emergencies Strategy. And this is supported by development partners. When we launch it, we will then embark on execution and implementation. And we do look forward to a team that has the discipline of execution. And in terms of food reserves, the Ministry of Agriculture comes in to this particular docket. I have looked at their proposals, not only the Ministry of Agriculture, but the current administration's manifestos and plans on agriculture, which we are all aware. And we look forward to the fruition of these plans and the activities that are going on to promote agriculture, the large scale, the proposals to have food reserves. So all these activities are to position us better in the future droughts, because they will surely come. But we do hope that the country, the communities and the counties, and even ministries, and all of us will be much better placed to handle that. One of the mandates for these state departments is livestock development in the arid and semi-arid lands. We are coming up with newer programs for fodder, the fodder programs. We have proposals on livestock transformation. We have one particular program that is supported by various development partners, and we are almost at the tail end of the proposals that will come through. We have come up with a steering committee, which we have put together, and we believe are of big thinkers, strategic thinkers, to think with us and see how we can transform the livestock sector in the arid and semi-arid lands, taking cognizance of the fact that this was one of the most affected sectors during this drought. And so we are looking at fodder commercialization so that we have more fodder available. We are looking at better breeds of animals. We are looking at just the vaccinations. We are looking at what more commercialization we can work with communities so that they can also look at livestock as part of the commercial development in the arid and semi-arid lands. And I think going forward, I am certain and I believe that some of these proposals, or most of them, will bear good fruit to face future droughts with better resilience, not only for communities or the people part of it, but the livestock, the wildlife, and every other sector that is ordinarily affected by the drought. I thank you.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want first to commend the CS for the wonderful and competencies as answering her questions. Two, I want to ask the CS that the food distribution is done through sub-counties. And you know, some areas have more sub-counties than others. And one sub-county may have more population than other one. But the food is actually done across the board. So I think there's a lot of disparity in food distribution in that because of the population differences and the sub-county difference, depending on, you know, the severity of the drought. One other thing, Madam Speaker, is that because of seepage and because of transportation, the cost of delivering food is just too high. A bag maybe that cost you around 7,000 shillings might cost, when it reaches the end, of almost 15,000 shillings. I know your ministry doing cash transfer through under the hunger safety program. When you give about 4 or 5 kilos, it might take a family 3 days, 4 days. But when you give them cash, they will be able to manage themselves, and it will be cheaper for the ministry or for the government. And then giving, you know, maize and beans alone or oil. So what plan do you have to transfer instead of the food? Because of the high cost, you go to, you know, even the non-state actors, like NGOs, are now starting back to cash transfer. So what is your plan for, because relief food is not sustainable and you cannot continue throughout. Is this unnecessary costly? Two, it is not enough for the people. It takes less than a week for one supply, and then maybe the next supply may be even 3 or 4 months. Those, I think that's my question. So what is your plan for that? And why is it that, what plan do you have for the equal distribution of the food based on the number of people or the population? Thank you.
Honorable Sears.
Honorable Speaker, I'll take the question by Senator Abbas. First, on the food distribution, and this is based on reports that are prepared by the National Drought Management Authority and the county steering groups, but the distribution is based on the population at the sub-county level. And when we get that data, because some sub-counties are vast and sparsely populated, while some are heavily populated. So we receive that data from both at the sub-county level, and that is validated by National Drought Management Authority, NDMA, and that informs how much food and how much the rice and the beans, how much should then be sent to the county. It is a fact that we cannot have enough food because of the limited resources and a tight fiscal space. So based on the resources that are available and the food we procure, we try to balance and just do the best we can with what is available. We are cognizant that cash transfer has less logistics, doesn't have transport costs, because, Mr. Speaker, relief food distribution is a whole operation in terms of food, vehicles, logistics, records, and all that. Cash transfer would be the way to go. Currently, we do both. Cash transfer at a smaller scale, the programs that are in place, some of them supported by the development partners, we are looking at this to see how we can spread this to more counties than currently we have, so that in future we have more cash transfers and the relief food becomes less, and to reach pockets that are really needy or pockets that deserve the actual food rather than the cash transfer. So working together with the support we are receiving from the development partners on these strategies of hunger safety net and also cash transfers, I will call it again a work in progress. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Karungo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I take this opportunity also to thank Madam Waziri because of her responses, which I feel satisfying. But I want to build up on a question that was asked by Senator Abbas, because I wanted to ask almost the same question. Mr. Speaker, you either have food or you don't. And there are factors that contribute towards that. Maybe lack of employment, lack of job, lack of access to food. But in this case, I know we are talking about famine. So when there is famine, that is long term. So I wanted Madam CS to tell us, those who benefit from this program, how long do they get this kind of food distribution? What is the duration? Because if you're given food, and the drought is there for a few months, you need food for a longer period of time. Because, Mr. Speaker, I've noted some politicians are using this food distribution as a campaign tool, where this food is taken to an area, they're given 2 packets of rice, 1 bowl of beans, and they will never go back there again. So sometimes I wonder, how long will this person benefit from this kind of food? And do we have data, you know, like we do monitoring. Yes, we give this person food, and what is a success story? And finally, Mr. Speaker, instead of giving cash, because I know the cash is there, instead of buying this food directly and distributing to the people, why don't you come with food vouchers? You know, this will encourage business people from that area to go where the food is, buy it, go back to their home, and sell it to their communities through these vouchers. If you remember very well, when there was famine in the northern side of this country, potatoes were rotting in Nyandarua. There was plenty of food in Nyandarua. So if these people had maybe cash or maybe the vouchers, somebody will just go, you know, from that area and just buy this food and take it home to sell to their people. That way you promote business. You also give them an idea to see other places in this country. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Madam CS.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll take the question by Senator Karungo. And in response to the first question, I wish to confirm that during the drought, or between January and May, when I've been handling this docket, and I believe even previously, relief food is sent to the sub-counties at a duration of 30 days or every month, depending on the quantities available and the availability. So we distribute every month. I also want to say that the process of food distribution, the targeting of the vulnerable, the work at the county level by the county steering committee never changes. We have a policy and a program in place. If you see leaders or other people during food distribution, I believe they're just witnessing or participating in that program. But our program is firmly documented and it follows through. And we copy, whenever we distribute food, we copy of all the leaders, and we copy elected leaders, and they have the discretion to go witness, either for confirmation, for witnessing, or just participating with the communities. We have the data of the food we have distributed since February, and that is available, and that shows per sub-county, per county, and every area, including the quantities. And we also get returns at the county level. After every distribution, we have the returns, which we then study and see what observations and confirmations or queries or questions that we may have or clarifications to seek. Mr. Speaker, on the food vouchers, I wish to say that today we have received valuable input on how to manage these drought issues relief food. Though our markets, especially in the ASAL areas, are not fully developed to a level of having food vouchers, this is a good idea. I will task the technical teams to look at the proposals we have received today, including the proposal about the food vouchers, because we must improve, we must make it easier logistically, we must make it more efficient, we must make it more effective, and above all, we must uphold the highest levels of dignity, even as we intervene to support vulnerable communities. I thank you.
Thank you. Last but not the least, Senator Charlie Samson, Kiplotich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, mine is, I think colleagues have asked, but just to ask the CS, is on the issue whether he had a discussion. You remember, Mr. Speaker, sir, a few years ago, the former Jubilee administration removed what we call strategic grain reserve. I don't know the CS of EAC and ASOL areas, whether they have had a discussion with the Ministry of Agriculture with the view of reviving strategic grain reserve. Because in Nandi, for example, where I come, there is always milk clot. When we harvest our maize, we always, and you remember what we said in November last year, Mr. Speaker, we have beans. Other colleagues here, you have talked about mango beans in Machakos. We have many other products that, if it can be put under strategic grain reserve, Mr. Speaker, sir, it would be very important in terms of food security. And food security, Mr. Speaker, is one of the core agenda of the Kenya Kwanza administration. So could the CS be gracious enough to provide information on the way of ensuring that strategic grain reserve is in place, and whether she did request either through her colleague, Senator Mithika Linturi, or herself to get budget allocation for operation of strategic grain reserve in the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Madam CS.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are at such a time in this country that we haven't had sufficient food, leave alone a reserve. But having said that, we are having conversations with the Ministry of Agriculture, but first, to have sufficient food, and then have agriculture and farming and production that can have a reserve, that can have leftover. Looking at the activities and what the government is doing, the current administration, in terms of agriculture, providing fertilizer, encouraging farmers to farm, promoting irrigation, all those activities, I believe will stabilize the current need for food sufficiency, and we will then get into strategic food reserves. We'll have to produce enough to eat first. Currently, we are net, so to speak, we are on debit. We have to balance that, get a credit, and get to the strategic food reserves. I want to say positively that there are active discussions going on with the Ministry of Agriculture and other players and government officials, and at the opportune time, we will be glad to update members on the progress being made in this regard. And we look forward to start with to getting a bumper harvest based on the rains we have received and the activities we have seen, more enthusiastic farming that we have witnessed even as we go across the country. And we are hopeful that we will achieve this aspiration of having strategic food reserves that can sustain the country even during some of the worst droughts, like the one we have seen in recent times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam CS. I can see on my screen two senators again. Chalagay, do you have no, you can't ask two questions. Sorry? No, you cannot ask two questions, Akona. Sorry? On what you have asked about the green reserve? You are not satisfied with the answer given. Do you have enough grains to keep in the stores as a strategic grain? That's the second country.
I think, Madam CS, in the interest of time, I think what I requested, I appreciate that we might not have enough food in the country to sustain, but I wanted the CS to give practical steps into reopening and functionality of strategic grain reserve. That was my question. Not about, I know there is the aspect of food security, food sustainability, and my only concern was whether, in consultation with the Ministry of Agriculture, the operationalization and functionality and reopening of strategic grain reserve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Madam CS, do you have something to add on that?
Mr. Speaker, I would request that we have a more comprehensive conversation with the Ministry of Agriculture, who is one of the strategic or the most strategic and key player in this conversation, so that to enable us have more detailed and comprehensive responses to that question.
Senator Mohamed Chute, do you want to close with a comment? Because you exhausted your two questions.
No, I didn't, Mr. Speaker. The final one was this one now. I asked only one question. I asked only one question.
On the CSEAC?
I asked
or
only...
a different CS?
No.
Is it a different matter? Or
No, the same matter. I asked one question, and the last one I'm asking now, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Madam CS, for your good answers. I wanted to know if the CS is aware that Kenya Kwanza campaigns, in the Kenya Kwanza campaigns, the president was propagating the spirit of bottom-up. I wanted to know if the CS has any plans to pre-qualify distributors or suppliers from the 47 counties, so that with that pre-qualification, a supplier from Marsabit can supply goods from the nearest point, like Meru or Nyahururu, so that the cost of food, cost of transport will come down. Madam CS, you are aware that we have challenges in some counties and sub-locations because currently you are using trailers, 30-ton trailers to transport food, and it cannot go inside the locations. So what plans do you have, Madam, to pre-qualify suppliers from the 47 counties, even if, let's say, if you can have 5 or 6 suppliers from each counties to supply food rations to their respective counties? Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
CS.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I will respond to the intervention by Senator Chute. The current procurement process is open to everybody to participate. However, it is certainly a very good suggestion to involve the local, micro, small, and even medium enterprises and even individuals in participating in the supply of relief food and other humanitarian commodities. And this is in keeping with the Kenya Kwanza's ideology of bottom-up economic transformation. And the manifesto, the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, promised to actually provide even opportunities, even a fund to cater for the MSMEs and individuals as a deliberate effort to support them and to grow them and to support their businesses. So including that category in the supply of relief food at the local levels resonates perfectly with the current administration's ideology. And therefore, based on our discussions today, I will ask the technical officers to interrogate the current status and the current process to see how best we can include this category and promote the bottom-up business agenda and include the macro, the micro, and small and medium enterprises in the list of suppliers, but of course, without disrupting the existing rhythms, the decorums, and promoting efficiency, and above all, also the best cost that will be available. And so we will take this up and have the technical teams, the procurement teams, come up with modalities of entrenching this into the current procurement process and the current supplier list of who can supply the relief food, even at the local level. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam CS. You know, it is very strange. I've been here for quite some time. I've hosted CSs. But you are very special members are prodding you. Yeah? So that means, Madam CS, you have handled that question properly. I actually saw the answer that you give, the document, which is very satisfactory. We would really encourage as a house other CSs to follow suit. Lakini unajua Kiswahili inasema mgema akisifiwa tembo ulitia maji. So make sure, Madam CS, you maintain the standard, and so that we can be able to develop this country. When I was sitting there, was the Meru sitting as a senator for Meru County. I also had a question, but now I cannot be able to take part in asking you questions when I'm chairing. So I'll get some time and come to your office for my question, so that also I can be able to serve the Meru community properly. So I want to thank you for your time and officers, and now we have exhausted the questions, so we want to release you so that you can go proceed and serve other Kenyans at your office. Kindly escort the CS. Also, she can pass by the Speaker's office for a cup of tea if she is interested. Thank you very much indeed, Madam CS. Let's go to the next order. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 143 pupils. Are they still there? Oh, they have left, but I want to acknowledge the Buruburu and Sitam schools in Buruburu. They are absent, but in absentia, I want to really have welcomed them in the Senate. Thank you very much. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, state of mental health of police officers.
This is a resumption of debate, Senator Tobiko, and a balance of 8 minutes. She's not around. What is your point of order, meanwhile, Senator Chalgei?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Looking at amended Standing Orders 51, Mr. Speaker, I thought we should have, I know there is a ruling you have made, and I'm raising understanding order number 1. Because looking, Mr. Speaker, as you retreat to write your ruling, I'm not reopening or varying your ruling. You need to give us direction, because the next statement that is meant for CS trade has been synonymous with the question time. So, but, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chari, have your seat. Resume your seat, kindly. That matter was well addressed by the Speaker, my colleague, when he was here.
I was raising
And
number one.
no, that's what I'm saying. I'm giving you guidance that that matter is well placed. It will be canvassed tomorrow at a high-level meeting, which will make some conclusions. So wait for the communication. Senators, I cannot see. Senator Chalege, you want to contribute to this motion? Yeah, now that there are no other senators interested to contribute to this motion, so the motion is now concluded. The debate is concluded, but the move of the motion, Senator Aminda, is not present today. She's out on official duties. So we go to the next order. She will reply when she's available next time.
Order number 9, motion, compensation to the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States Embassy in Nairobi. Resumption of debate interrupted on Tuesday, 2nd May 2023.
I'm also aware that this motion was stood down because the mover is using other method to canvass this motion. So we still now go to the next one.
Order number 10, motion, incorporation of intelligent water management systems in building plans for sustainable living.
Senator Waume Matinga, are you ready to move the motion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. Yes, I'm ready to move the motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, I start to move the motion of incorporation of intelligent water management systems in the building plans for sustainable living. Mr. Speaker, sir, aware that water is an essential yet scarce resource whose demand is increasing rapidly, due to population growth, urbanization, and industrialization, and whose wastage has become an issue that needs to be addressed urgently owing to Kenya's vulnerability to climate change. And noting that there is a growth in the number of buildings coming up to accommodate the rapidly growing population, thereby posing a challenge to water management. Appreciating that the incorporation of water management system building plans include a variety of techniques and technologies such as rainwater harvesting, wastewater recycling, low-flow plumbing, and sensor systems that detect leaks and deactivate water flow when necessary, thereby optimizing the use of water by eliminating water overexploitation, wastewater management, and pollution. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Ministry of Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, in coordination with the Council of Governors and the National Environmental Management Authority, to incorporate in the building code and standards a requirement for intelligent water management system in all building plans, and undertake a systematic nationwide renovation to government-owned buildings to incorporate water management systems. Mr. Speaker, sir, we are all aware that global and climate change in the world has become real. The last couple of years, Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenya found herself in a situation where we did not only have water shortage, but we faced a drought that we have never faced in the last 40, the worst in the last 40 years. Mr. Speaker, sir, many a times we've treated water like a resource that is endless. We saw rivers and dams, Mr. Speaker, sir, dwindle. We saw large rivers that were known to always be flowing come to a halt. We've seen, Mr. Speaker, sir, desertification, and the increase of vassal areas have continued to increase in Kenya. It is therefore very, very important, Mr. Speaker, sir, that in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, that we embark on measures that will ensure that we do use water sustainably so that we can ensure that our future generations will get a bit of it. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is our commitment in this Senate and the introduction of intelligent water management systems that will ensure that water remains a sustainable resource, and that, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we will continue to have the same resource. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, maybe you can protect me from my neighbor who's insisting on being on the phone and therefore distracting me. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, if we fail to arise to the occasion, incorporate intelligent technologies in water management in our building, and more specifically so, Mr. Speaker, sir, when the Kenya Kwanza government has undertaken to construct several affordable houses, it is time, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we come up with standardized high-level policy and legislative measures that will ensure that what we use as water does not become a waste, but we implement also technologies that will allow recycling of water and, most importantly, ensuring that we do not have a lot of water losses. Mr. Speaker, sir, it has been reported by some water service providers that their non-revenue water goes up to maybe up to, some of them go up to 70%. Non-revenue water, Mr. Speaker, sir, is water that has been harvested but cannot be accounted for. This is, Mr. Speaker, sir, due to odd in water infrastructure distribution systems or leakages, all at worst, Mr. Speaker, sir, water that has been siphoned or rather stolen from the main distribution lines, therefore leading to a lot of losses in terms of revenue. Mr. Speaker, sir, the policy of the Kenya Kwanza government to construct huge mega dams using public-private partnership would mean that we have to manage water properly so that what we harvest can also be accounted for. With non-revenue of about 70%, Mr. Speaker, sir, these would remain a pipe dream. It is therefore important, Mr. Speaker, that we embark on putting into place not only new policies, but equally infrastructure that can detect leakages so that water can be treated as variable asset. Mr. Speaker, sir, water is life. We know that a human body is made of about 70% of fluid, and therefore it would be very important, Mr. Speaker, if we, for the purpose of our future generation and in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, engage in practices that may ensure that we can save on water. This would mean, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the government would need to create new policies, and we as the Senate must come up with the legal legislative framework that will enforce such a policies both at the county level and also at the national level. This would mean, Mr. Speaker, sir, that all the buildings that are owned by the government, they need to meet a given standard, and then all the new buildings that are coming must incorporate intelligent systems so that we can be able to detect water losses, and most importantly also incorporate the aspect of water harvesting. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that we have a lot of unemployed, educated young girls and boys. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have institutions of higher learning like JKUAT, Dedan Kimathi University, that are very advanced in technology. It is the high time, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we leverage the availability of the technology and technical survey young people to come up with intelligent metering system, intelligent water flow detection system, and, Mr. Speaker, sir, maybe even go a step further and introduce innovative technology that can be founded and innovated within the country, so that as we manage water intelligently, we can also be able to create opportunities for the young boys and girls who have all the necessary pre-qualifications in terms of academic qualification to be able to do that. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, That would not be possible if the government does not give the incentives in terms of capital investment and maybe collaborative engagement with the institutions of higher learning, which are specifically tailor-cut to address these aspects of water shortage. Mr. Speaker, sir, we will be judged very harshly by the future generation if we sit down and watch as water continue to be wasted, knowing so well wet water is not only a scarce commodity, but equally a very, very vital resource that must be used prudently. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have seen it in the developed countries. They incorporate water intelligence systems in their buildings so that you do not have running pipes when you do not need it. When you visit a bathroom, Mr. Speaker, sir, you will find when you're brushing your teeth, you take 5 minutes, and all this time water is running. Mr. Speaker, sir, by simple implementation of technology that will sense the pipe with pipes with sensors, we'll be able to save up to 70% of the water that we use every morning. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a challenge to us and our responsibility and our moral obligation to the future generations. Mr. Speaker, sir, having spoken about leveraging technology, it is also very important that we have a high-level policy from the government and from multi-sectoral intervention that addresses water harvesting issues, and not only that, Mr. Speaker, sir, but also looking at providing potable water as is the requirement of the SDGs, of which Kenya is a signatory. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is my desire to see before the lifetime of the current House that we'll come up with measures that will address this very, very important issue, so that among the many things that we'll have achieved, we can say that one of the major milestones that we have achieved, Mr. Speaker, sir, is not only conserving water, but ensuring that there'll be enough of it for the next generations that will come. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Kenya Kwanza government is committed. And as we are talking, Mr. Speaker, sir, you know there is an ongoing debate in the other house of the finance bill. And what we are talking about, Mr. Speaker, sir, is taking our economic destination in our own hands without having to over-rely with donor-funded initiatives. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is the high time that we do appreciate the fact that Kenyans have become of age to be able to move and develop the country using their own dynamics. It is with this spirit, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I'm standing here and telling ourselves that it is time that we came up with interventions. It is time, Mr. Speaker, sir, we started a conversation of how affordable water can be to all households, and, Mr. Speaker, sir, curb the wastage that has made water, which is an essential commodity, very, very expensive to many. Mr. Speaker, sir, according to Vision 2030, our dream was to have potable water in every household in Kenya. Sadly enough, Mr. Speaker, sir, we've not been able to move towards this goal because we've been tied up with bureaucracies and a lot of wastages, Mr. Speaker, sir. The issue of governance at the water supply level, water distribution level, at policy formulation level, have been to blame, or has become a major stumbling block that we have not been able to achieve this goal. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, with the current use of technology, I now do want to take an example of now the money transfer using the M-Pesa services. It is possible, Mr. Speaker, sir, to incorporate intelligent systems, smart meters, leakage systems, low pressure water distribution to ensure that what we harvest and what we harness, we use it 100% effectively and efficiently. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is my desire to see the future of our country being driven by Kenyans. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I do want to challenge ourselves as the senators, as Kenyans, that it's high time we start even at private level involving intelligent water management systems in our homes, as much as we would still wait for the formulation of the government policies at a higher level. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would want to request also the county governments, especially those ones who have been affected by climate change. It is high time that we started now investing in the future of our generation by ensuring that the water resources are not only managed prudently, but we also put efforts in place as we manage the water and put the intelligence systems in place, that we also put measures in place to ensure that we conserve water by way of planting trees and managing the riparian land. Mr. Speaker, sir, the commitment of the Kenya Kwanza government to plant several billions of trees is in line with this dream to make Kenya one of the environmentally friendly countries, while at the same time ensuring that we conserve and sustain our environment. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, can only be possible if we ensure that at the other end of the water usage, that we manage it properly, avoid wastages, and most importantly, ensure that what we have used, that what flows out of our houses can be reused at a later point. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know Nairobi used to be known for its clean waters and true clean rivers. Today, if you look at Nairobi River and the Gong River, it's a pale shadow of its own former self. Mr. Speaker, sir, with the kind of pollution, industrial wastage being pumped into the river, human waste being pumped into the river, Mr. Speaker, sir, the people living in the lower side of the country, in the lower side of the coastal region, are suffering the consequences of our irresponsible behavior in water use management. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a high time that we came up with measures that would ensure that every Kenyan, according to the Constitution, has a right to have access to clean water. We can only be able to realize this, Mr. Speaker, sir, if we also engage ourselves in prudent management of water resources. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would want to request my colleagues in the Senate, as they go about their business in the county governments, to ensure that as much as we are preaching the gospel of planting tree, we also preach the gospel of using water prudently, of ensuring that our water management are in conformity with the Vision 2030, which requires that every home must have access to clean water. As I sit down, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would want to request my colleagues sitting here to support this motion and to ensure that the gospel of water management, intelligent water management system, is being preached in every corner of this country, because it is a moral obligation to our country, to our future generation. It is our responsibility to ensure that the children of our children will have a sustainable environment. As a Christian, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Bible tells me that an intelligent parent will ensure that he leaves inheritance for the children of his children. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would want this to be the inheritance that I leave for the children of my children, ensuring that they have a sustainable environment where clean water is available. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beg to move.
Who is seconding?
I request Senator Chelagay to second.
Senator Chelagay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. As I rise to second, I want to congratulate the mover of the motion, Senator Waome Wamatinga, for this wonderful bill. Mr. Speaker, and for this motion, sorry, my apologies for different use of semantics. Mr. Speaker, Article 43, and I want to say, Mr. Speaker, some of the people imagine that after the motion has been debated, has been passed, many people would assume, Mr. Speaker, that our resolutions, or as we adopt as the House, many people, Mr. Speaker, sir, imagine that nothing is being done. Mr. Speaker, sir, if you remember, around 3 weeks ago, at the floor of the House, I was moving to just to let colleagues, because most of the colleagues, Mr. Speaker, has been arguing that we should have an implementation committee to follow up on the resolution of the House. You remember, Mr. Speaker, sir, my motion on the issue of sports and clean sports and adoption. I'm happy that after the resolution of the House, the President himself, when we requested about the reward scheme for athletes, Mr. Speaker, sir, the President and the government has taken what we proposed as a Senate. For example, yesterday he gave the government gave Faith 5 million and a house, and also awarded Ferdinand Omanyala 2 million for Faith breaking 2 records, that is 5,000 and others.
Senator Chalagay, for the purpose of the record, Did we pass as a house that every athletee, once he or she wins, should get 5 million and a house, so that also other Kenyans we can...
No, Mr. Speaker,
follow.
I'm just illustrating the motion that I brought on the issue of sports, that one of the resolution of the House was to review the reward system or reward structure towards our sportsmen and women. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'm just giving an example of what the government did yesterday to confirm that if we resolve as the House through this motion of Senator Waume Wamatinga on the issue of water.
Is that the set standard that everybody will be getting?
You know, I believe in everything that what President William Ruto says. So I believe that is the standard, because in my own opinion, Mr. Speaker, sir, if breaking world record, you will get 5 million. You break the second one, you get 5 million. I think for the purposes of reward scheme towards our sportsmen and women, I think that's the best reward. Because in the past, Mr. Speaker, our sportsmen and women were only getting less than $1 million. Now it is like Museveni. You remember what Museveni did? He was giving you a house, a car, and if you are not married, a wife, or if you are not, if you don't have a husband, he will ensure that you get a husband. So I wanted just to confirm to the House, Mr. Speaker, that many people might imagine we are doing talk shop. Senator Wamatinga has highlighted the challenges of water, the accessibility of water, the use of water. Many people would imagine that we are doing a talk shop. We are not doing, Mr. Speaker. There are many resolutions, and I want to allay fears of our members, because, Mr. Speaker, when we are sitting in the lounge, many members would ask, so after the motion has been resolved, what follows? And I'm happy there are a number of issues, even the ring fence of sports fund and other issues. So coming to this motion, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate and commend Senator Wamatinga, the Senator of Nyeri, for bringing this motion. Mr. Speaker, water is one of the available resource. It is readily available, but it is not available again. That's the problem we have in the country, Mr. Speaker. When you look under Article 43, Mr. Speaker, every Kenyan under economic and social rights has a right to clean and safe water. Mr. Speaker, the demand for water in the country, if you look at the needs of a household, 70% of water demand goes to agriculture. And you know, people like Senator Danson Mungatana, Mr. Speaker, use irrigation to plant their food, and like where we use rain-fed agriculture, maybe in parts of Meru, in Nandi, and many others. But when you go to the country of Senator Mungatana, Mr. Speaker, you will find out that the issue of demand of water in a household goes to the 70% demand, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we must be ready to implement Article 43 on economic and social rights. And I think when the President will address the joint sitting and submit, because the Constitution demands that the President submits the progress report on the implementation of economic, social rights and any other form of rights, Mr. Speaker, we shall be able to interrogate. Mr. Speaker, when you look at an average of household in Kenya, the spending of water, we spend 1,365 liters per week. Mr. Speaker, this is a household is spending 1,365 liters per week per household in the country. There is a population of 53.5 Kenyans across the world, Mr. Speaker, and a number of them it is, you know, and I've seen students, Mr. Speaker, when some of us, you know, we went to schools that were very cold. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm not saying water was not available in the grade school of Kapsabet Boys. Mr. Speaker, for record, it has produced the 2nd president, and it has now produced the 5th president. So we don't know whether it will produce the 7th president. That is the Kapsabet Boys High School. Mr. Speaker, sir, because of the cold of Kapsabet town and environs, and Kapsabet is situated there, we used to do what we call passport. And I'm not encouraging our students to be in that direction, where they should shower daily. But during our time, Mr. Speaker, we use water, and us used to have a lot of allergy. And somebody has said, Mr. Speaker, when it rains in this country, it looks like also the electricity also disappears. So I don't know the relationship. Mr. Speaker, on the issue number 3, I've seen, and you know, all of us live in Nairobi. According to statistics, Mr. Speaker, that we have, and we are talking about Nairobi specifically because it's our capital city. We are talking about building plans to ensure there is incorporation of water management systems. Mr. Speaker, and I remember I saw Senator Omuranga, Senator Nyutu. We had an issue of building a tunnel all the way from Murang'a to supply efficient and sufficient water to Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, Nairobi as a county, where we are as a city, the daily demand of water is 810 million liters, Mr. Speaker. The supply that Nairobi city gets per day is 550 million liters per day, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the deficit is 265 million daily in Nairobi. I'm just using Nairobi as an example because it's the capital city and where all of us and most of us reside, work, and live in, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, there is still a big challenge in terms of access to clean water. We need to look at the quality of water, Mr. Speaker. When you go to rivers, and I want to thank President Dr. William Ruto, he has taken an initiative of clean rivers. He has taken an initiative of climate change action, of planting trees, of having clean. The quality of water, Mr. Speaker, is very poor. There are many lead, magnesium, which will affect our health. Either it causes the increase, Mr. Speaker, of cancer or other diseases. Also, the quality of water, we must look at it, Mr. Speaker. The quality of water in this country is very poor because most of the diseases, like trichomoniasis, or the pronunciation is a bit complicated, and other diseases that are waterborne, is because of the quality of water, Mr. Speaker. And unfortunately, some of this water get into our homes, get into our showers, what we drink, Mr. Speaker. So the issue of quality water should be looked at, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it behooves the country to note also, and I note the change of the seat of the Speaker. I think our colleague, the Deputy Speaker, was on the seat. I note the change of Senator Aji as the new Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the country, we are losing per year, Mr. Speaker, can you believe this, 430 million water. Either leakages of burst pipes and non-revenue water. Mr. Speaker, even as we discuss about the finance bill by our counterparts in the National Assembly, we should be looking at why are we losing non-revenue water and water tax. Because we should be taxing to get more revenue to fund our budget, which is approaching 3.6 trillion, Mr. Speaker, and in improving. Mr. Speaker, so that is lost every day, Mr. Speaker. Number 6 point.
Senator Cherargei, one moment. What is your point of order, Wakoli Ofula, Senator?
Honorable Speaker, is it fair in the eyes of young pupils and Kenyans for a distinguished barrister in the House to mislead this House that our people, by drinking bad water, they get trypanosomiasis? This is sleeping sickness, Mheshimiwa Speaker, transmitted by tsetse flies, Honorable Speaker. It is in order. You are a cattle farmer, my distinguished friend. Tsetse flies live among your people, Mheshimiwa Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Wakoli, I think I remember Senator Cherargei stating that he was not sure of the exact name of the disease he wanted to refer to, but he stands guided, I guess, by that.
Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't say I'm the owner of knowledge sometimes, Mr. Speaker, but you know he's saying tsetse fly lives among my people. That is also a dangerous statement. It should strike out. But I agree, Mr. Speaker. I think I interchangeably use the word waterborne diseases.
Maybe I can correct him. Tsetse fly live amongst my people in Ijara constituency.
Okay,
that I can confirm.
But I think Nandi, we don't have tsetse flies. Therefore, I think you should. But anyway, that's a discussion we can have with my. But thank you, Senator Wakoli, for that. It shows our colleagues are doing a good job, Mr. Speaker, and I commend that. Mr. Speaker, and the fifth, on the issue of non-revenue water, I said we lose 430 million liters, Mr. Speaker, per year, through leakages, through burst of pipes. This water is called what we call non-revenue water. And I want to thank Senator Wamatinga. He has aptly put it on point. If we can tax this 430 million, Mr. Speaker, I also find it we need to be careful as we tax water. when you look at by the time water is being taken to the pipe and being harvested in a dam, it should around 5 shillings per liter, thereabout. But by the time it reaches to the consumer, it is 100 or 150 times of even the production of that water, Mr. Speaker. So also we should not make water, and I know water users have complained about this, Mr. Speaker. We should be very careful so that we also, because, Mr. Speaker, we need to be careful on this loss of water. Have you noticed in this city and other parts of the country, there is no day water bowsers are off the market? And they can never be off the market so long as there is sabotage of accessibility to water to your home. For example, Nairobi needs 810 million liters per day. We get 550 million liters per day. A deficit of 260 million liters per day to our households here in Nairobi, the capital city. That is why we need also enforcement. That is my 6th point. Enforcement and protection of water, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, because the water bowsers will never be off the market and water vendors so long as there is adequate and access to clean and safe water. So the issue of enforcement, and I want to thank, I think, Uasin Gishu County, Mr. Speaker. They have water, and I don't, it is not Uasin Gishu, it is the Ministry of Interior led by Senator Professor Kithure Kindiki, Mr. Speaker, where they have formed a unit, Mr. Speaker, a water enforcement unit of the police to protect, because now water are critical key installations in the country, just like the SIPU, where they are protecting strategic installations within the government, Mr. Speaker. And I want to laud the government and Senator Professor Kithure Kindiki. It is very innovative, so that we don't have to lose 430 million liters through either sabotage, through leakages, through loss of the, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to say, to ensure, if we put a water, Mr. Speaker, water protection unit within the national interior, the issue of non-revenue water and collection of taxes among water will be very easy. Number 7, Mr. Speaker, we need to look about the water recycling in our, and ensuring, Mr. Speaker, and access to water. So, Speaker, I'm happy that President Dr. William Ruto has insisted on food security and the issue of dams. I wish when I come to Garissa and other parts of northern Kenya, Mandera, and Mr. Speaker, our condolences and sympathies to many families who lost their lives because of the heinous act of the cowards. You know, those are cowards where they set IED and go and hide for other people to die. My condolences and the deepest sympathies to families and friends who have lost their loved ones through that tragic terrorist attack by cowards, Mr. Speaker. So when you want to go, if you want to make Northern Kenya to be productive, the future of this country, Mr. Speaker, is not in Nandi or Kisii. It is in Northern Kenya. And I'm told you have aquifer, the fresh water, and I saw Senator Ekwoma, Lomenen, they have the largest that can go for 70 years, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure there is access of water for animals, for irrigation, and that is how we can improve food security. And I'm happy Dr. President William Ruto has insisted on ensuring there are dams like Armenu. We have poster dams in Bomet, where Commissioner Joyce Korir comes from. We have the one in Chemosusu Dam. We have another one, a number of them across the country, even in northern Kenya, which 100 dams that the president has proposed that he's working on. Even in Nandi, Mr. Speaker, we are lucky because we have revived the Kepen Dam, Mr. Speaker, which will ensure that access to water in Nandi County, especially to Kapsabet, which is the headquarters of Kapsabet Town, which is the headquarters of Nandi County, and other parts of Lesotho, Mr. Speaker. We are happy that we are having Kepen Dam on course. We are happy that we are having Kipkaren Dam, Mr. Speaker, who is 1.2 billion, that is next to my home, that will supply Mosoriat, Kabiet, and other areas in Nandi North. Mr. Speaker, the Kepen Dam, we have sewerage and sanitation around Nandi Hills, which is ongoing, Mr. Speaker. And also we have what we call Keses Dam. Keses Dam, Mr. Speaker, supplies water up to even Lesotho ward and part of Lesotho ward and part of Nandi Hills constituency. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, and also part of Moi University and other areas. And Mr. Speaker, this is very important because if we can ensure everybody gets supply and water to their place, Mr. Speaker, it will be very easier. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, because I'm seeing my time is fast spent, and to have colleagues, Mr. Speaker, the issue of water, we must ensure that in building plans, Mr. Speaker, I was being told a story of a developer in this city that decided to develop everything, sewerage and everything, the piping and water, and decided in that apartment just to build a septic tank within, I don't know, I don't want to mention the estate in this city, in that apartment, and then ensure that they just put as a septic tank without a proper sewerage and sanitation process. So the issue of water, we need to teach Kenyans so now we can save water. And I think let us promote the issue of water quality, water recycling, Mr. Speaker, and also finally to call National Construction Authority, which Ministry of Roads and Transport is under, so that as they approve the building plans, the fiscal planning, and NCA, National Construction Authority, Mr. Speaker, is able to check, because our enforcement agency is NCA. So if they don't check these buildings, Mr. Speaker, and one of the, to ensure that building codes and standards, and it is good, today we are lucky that the chairperson of Roads and Transport and Senator Karungo Adhangwa, by the way, Kiambu County is one of the worst affected by this issue of collapsing buildings. So I think he has had a number of conversations with the NCA to ensure before approvals of these buildings, the standard codes and everything, we must have at least a standard through NCA. And I hope the chair and the government can push to proper reconstitution of NCA, because we're having problems in approvals, physical planning, Mr. Speaker, and ensuring that we do, even, Mr. Speaker, even the old buildings, like KICC, Mr. Speaker, where our offices are, we still have a lot of challenges. Most of these senators will not tell you there are no lights in those offices. There is no water in some of those toilets. It's very dirty, Mr. Speaker. So we need to push for innovation and standard approval codes, Mr. Speaker. Most of my colleagues are suffering in KICC because the management there has decided to sleep on the job. And I know you are a victim, looking at the way you are agreeing with me, because even the corridors of KICC, and it is good Commissioner Joyce Koriri is here, maybe needs more funding to ensure that such issues are looked into. But we are suffering in KICC, Mr. Speaker. I hope you yourself and your office can intervene so that we have very good offices to ensure we dispense serious motions, serious statements, and serious bills where senators are working in a very good working environment, Mr. Speaker. With those very, very remarks, I beg to second and congratulate Senator Waume Omatinga, who is continually distinguishing himself. And I hope the people of Nyeri are noticing how the chairman of energy is overworking and delivering on the mandate on why he's here. So we are proud of him on what he's doing as the chair of energy and what he's doing on the floor of the House. With those merit remarks, I support and I beg to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Danson Mungatana. My apologies, Senators. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that aware that water is an essential yet scarce resource whose demand is increasing rapidly due to population growth, urbanization, and industrialization, and whose wastage has become an issue that needs to be addressed urgently owing to Kenya's vulnerability to climate change. Noting that there is a growth in the number of buildings coming up to accommodate the rapidly growing population, thereby posing a challenge to water management, appreciating that the incorporation of water management systems in building plans include a variety of techniques and technologies such as rainwater harvesting, wastewater recycling, low-flow plumbing, and sensor systems that detect leaks and deactivate water flow when necessary, thereby optimizing the use of water by eliminating water overexploitation, wastewater management, and pollution. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, in coordination with the Council of Governors and National Environmental Management Authority, to incorporate into incorporate into the building code and standards a requirement for intelligent water management systems in all building plans, and 2, undertake a systematic nationwide renovation to government-owned buildings to incorporate water management systems. I therefore call upon senators to make their contribution. Senator Danson Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to make my comments on this motion. Mr. Speaker, those of us who come from Tana River and areas where water scarcity is a big problem, we stand with any person who talks about conservation of water resources because it's a precious commodity. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I want to stand to support this motion that was brought by our chairman of the Energy Committee, the Honorable Senator Wamatinga, and seconded by our very own Nandi warrior, Senator Cherargei. Mr. Speaker, this motion is a technical motion, but it is really touching the issue that is affecting water distribution systems. Mr. Speaker, we have valued a lot in this country the petrol and oil distribution systems, but we have not valued water distribution systems. And what this motion is asking is that let us go back to the basics and let us give due attention to the systems of distribution of water like the way we do to the oil distribution. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Pipeline Corporation, they have a lot of investment in terms of intelligence in the management of leakages that can happen when the oil is being transmitted from one point to another. Mr. Speaker, what this motion is asking the relevant authorities is that let us borrow the intelligent systems of management, just like the way they have done for the oil industry. They should do the same and apply the same technology, if not better, for water, because water is life. Water should have been, in fact, prioritized, as opposed to putting so much in oil transportation, oil distribution, as opposed to water. Mr. Speaker, as we are speaking now, a lot of water is wasted when it is being moved from one point to another. And the result of that, Mr. Speaker, is that we have shortages all over, not just in Nairobi, but even in the distribution systems within our county, such as the county of Tana River. Mr. Speaker, time has come through this motion to urge the relevant authorities, Mr. Speaker, that they should now apply their sense in putting up proper systems of management of the pipelines, proper systems of management of the waters, so that when water is moving from one point to another, Mr. Speaker, we are able to get the full quality and value of that water when it reaches the destination point. Mr. Speaker, intelligence technology can be applied from one point to another. Sensors can be put, Mr. Speaker, so that water is not lost. And when there is leakage, water leakage is detected in good time and it is corrected so that the leakages are not wasted. Mr. Speaker, if these leakages that are occurring in all the pipelines in Kenya are taken care of, we will save a lot of water and we will save a lot of money. And so we want to urge the authorities that are involved that, Mr. Speaker, we should start the system of intelligence, water management within the distribution systems. Mr. Speaker, I want to also urge that through this motion, proper education on conservation of water
should be carried out. Mr. Speaker, in Kiswahili, they say mtoto umleavyo ndivyo akuavyo. In other words, interpretation is that as you bring up the child, so shall he be. Mr. Speaker, our children in schools, they are taught to wash hands during break time, when they go for PE, when they go to use the loos and back, they are taught to wash hands. But they are not told that wash hands with conservation in your mind. Mr. Speaker, schools in Kenya do not have intelligent water systems. You find, Mr. Speaker, a tap is running. You have 100 students who have gone for break to take tea or something. Mr. Speaker, maybe you can protect me, boss, from Senator Cherargei, who is moving around and distracting other senators. Mr. Speaker, what I'm trying to say is this. You have in primary schools a tap, one tap that is running. Children have gone out for break, and they have been taught that you need to wash your hands before break or after break, or lunchtime, after lunchtime. So you have a tap there running on and on and on in the dining hall. Why? They have been taught half the education. Their education has been given by their teachers and tutors to the extent that you need to wash your hands. But they have not been told that you need to conserve water. So, Mr. Speaker, this education ought to be carried out. Massive education in water conservation should be carried out, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is even in our houses, Mr. Speaker. Many of our children, they don't follow. We have not taught them conservation of water. Especially our beautiful young daughters. They enter showers, and that's when they start singing, they start dancing, and water is just running. You ask Mommy, why aren't you finishing showering? She says, I'm coming out. And they shower and shower and shower. It's because, Mr. Speaker, even parents, we have failed to teach our children how to manage and conserve water. There is lack of conservation education for water, even in our families. Mr. Speaker, we are praying that through this motion, this education, conservation of water education, shall be carried out. Parents who are listening to your senators from Kenya and elsewhere, that we shall teach our children, teachers and tutors, owners of institution of educations, not only in primary school, but in the secondary schools and in higher learning, that they will teach education, the education of water conservation, so that we are able to save water for the future. We have to have a change, a behavioral change amongst the population of Kenya. Those who don't have, Mr. Speaker, if you go to some of our areas, like in Tana River County, during the dry season, you see someone can use a simple gourd or a bottle of water to actually take care of a whole family. They are very good at conserving water because of the scarcity. But when the water again comes, when the rains come, people use water just like that. So, Mr. Speaker, I think one of the issues that this motion should seek is to educate, to underline the importance of education, behavioral change, cultural change, especially within urban areas, Mr. Speaker. We need to change our behavior as Kenyans, how we use our water, so that we can be able to save more. Mr. Speaker, this motion is calling on building codes to incorporate in them the requirement for intelligent water management systems. What does that mean, Mr. Speaker? It means architects, the Architectural Association of Kenya, if you are drawing your structures, and those engineers, water engineers and so on, everybody that is involved in putting up structures, and the government authorities, please tell your clients that they must incur that extra cost so that we can save water for our future generation. Mr. Speaker, if you go to some of the hotels, the high-end hotels, you put your hands to wash your hands, immediately it is sensed, you wash your hands, and immediately you remove your hand, the water stops flowing.
And that's what we are talking about, intelligent management of water system, so that these systems are incorporated in every building that is coming up. Mr. Speaker, in this program of affordable housing that the President is championing, we want to see that those designers will implement this motion, Mr. Speaker. We want them to put in systems that will save water, because it starts from the government, Mr. Speaker. That's why this motion is saying government buildings should also be renovated to include this system of intelligence in the water management. Because, Mr. Speaker, the wastage is too much. When we talk about wastage in government offices, it is excessive. And, Mr. Speaker, technology can be applied to help systems that will, creating systems that will save water, conserve water, because this is a scarce commodity. Mr. Speaker, I truly want to thank the Honorable Senator Wamatangi for coming up with this very good motion. And, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to address one of the fears that Senator Cherargei had spoken about. We have said that motions in this House will carry some consequence for the officers who will not implement them. Mr. Speaker, that is why I moved a bill, and it is now we are finalizing it. We passed it the committee stage here yesterday, and we are going to put it to the third reading, and we are going to push this bill and it becomes law, that when motions are passed in this House and in the National Assembly, these motions will be charged to a responsible officer. And that responsible officer, if they don't implement it, Mr. Speaker, penal consequences shall follow them. So, Mr. Speaker, even these implementation committees will become irrelevant, because with this one, the clerk of the National Assembly or the clerk of the Senate will write to the responsible officer and tell him, Senate has pronounced itself that from today, building codes must incorporate intelligent water management systems. And we need this to be incorporated. So if a government officer is approving building codes going forward, and I hope they are listening, then once that law becomes law, we will hold you liable for any failure to apply what this House, this Senate has said. This is an important thing. It is not personal to Mheshimiwa Wamatangi. It is for our nation. Our nation needs to conserve water. We need to inculcate in our children and all of us the need to have conservation of water in every place. They need to shower less. Please just take, in fact, I support that passport issue. The Honorable Cherargei has said it, that in Kapsabet High School, during the cold season, they would just enter and come out. Mr. Speaker, I want to confess, in Alliance High School, and me being one of them, during the cold season, Mr. Speaker, we used to practice water conservation, not because we wanted, but it's because of the climate situation there. We would just jump in for 1 minute and jump out. And Mr. Speaker, we are here. We were clean. And so, Mr. Speaker, I still think that we don't need to be showering for all these hours, singing, I don't know, singing praises and what. You can praise God outside the showers. Mr. Speaker, this culture needs to come. This culture needs to be put to the people so that we can save water. And Mr. Speaker, this motion ought to be supported by every member of this House who gets an opportunity to speak to it. And Mr. Speaker, I support it, and the people of Tana River support it. I thank you for the opportunity to contribute. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. I interrupt the debate to give a communication from the chair. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 90 students accompanied by 2 teachers from Moi Girls High School in Nairobi County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Cherargei, maybe can take 1 minute to welcome them.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I join you on my own behalf and on behalf of colleagues, the House, to welcome our beautiful girls from Moi Girls. With their performance has been exceptional. They are lucky that they are walking into the chamber when we are discussing a very critical motion on issue of water. And I hope we are not encouraging them to be taking passport showers, Mr. Speaker, as Senator Mungatana has alluded to. But we love you, we wish you well, we want you to succeed. We are praying for you. You are the future of this nation. And you are lucky because you study in the capital city of the Republic of Kenya. As you go back to school, pass our greetings to the principal and your parents and everybody. Assure them that the Senate will always ensure the issue of education is given top priority. So all the best and God bless you. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Eddie Okech, maybe you could also welcome them.
I prefer this. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I think that I'm always glad to see wonderful schools coming to visit us, because where we are right now, people like Cherargei are soon leaving the stage, and therefore the future of this country is actually seated here. And we really appreciate you coming to learn. And you know, this is also the time that you are looking at the future of your career, where you want to be in the future. And one of the best places to be is public service. Sometimes it's very difficult for young ladies to envision themselves in politics because of the number of discrimination we have seen time immemorial on ladies not being able to get public service opportunities. But I can assure you that you're very lucky that in Kenya we have got a house like the Senate, which provides opportunities to wonderful people. Like this house, we have got amazing senators who are women, who are doing great work to this country. We have got Senator Miraj there, who is a very fantastic contributor to this house and a great leader. And I wish that you came at a time that the house was full so that you could see amazing women who are doing great job here. So we want to wish you well as you visit. When you get chance, interact with some women senators. Try to avoid Senator Cherargei and Senator Mungatana, because I don't think they like cleanliness as much. They use this issue of scarcity as an excuse of not being of not being clean. So you might get wrong advice with regards to this discussion. But I hope you enjoy being in the Senate, and we wish you well with your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. We'll resume debate. I notice Paul Thangwa, you're the next speaker. Maybe you can take also a minute to welcome, since you're from a neighboring county.
As I contribute to the motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Yes, my name is Karongo Wathangwa, the senator for the neighboring county, which is Kiambu County. I take this opportunity to welcome the students of Moi Girls here in Nairobi and tell you you are the right place. You are lucky that your teacher saw it fit for you to come and see the place where the decisions of running this country are made. We are making the right decisions, not only for you, but everybody in this Republic of Kenya. So welcome, and as the senators have said, of course, they are not telling you not to shower. What exactly they are saying is we conserve water. And by saying that, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. And to support that point of misuse of water, in 2009, the president of Venezuela, who is Hugo Chavez, actually banned singing in showers in his country by telling his people not to sing, because the more you sing, you take 30 minutes, 1 hour, and the water is running out. Actually, he said for you to be clean or for you to be done, 3 minutes are enough. So I don't know whether we got to go that direction, but of course, that is something that was done. Mr. Speaker, this motion is asking us about 3 things. Is to optimize water use, reduce wastage, and promote efficient water management, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this motion could not come at the right time. This is the right time, when the country is about to roll out the affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, if all the suggestions, all the recommendations by the Senate are put in place, it can be incorporated in the plans for the affordable housing, where the President of this Republic is planning to build about 200,000 house units every year. You can imagine all those buildings if they have all these systems, intelligent systems, in a way of preserving water, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as much as we want this, we also want to caution the governors that as much as we want this to be incorporated, it should not be used against the contractors who in many counties, they are not able to get their approvals in time. We should not be looking like we are adding another impediment. All we have to do is to make sure that once it is incorporated, it is used and it is allowed and it is for the benefit of those who are building the structures, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, water companies. I happen to be a member of the CPIC committee, that is the County's Public Investment Committee. And all the audit reports that have appeared or that have been presented in front of that committee, all those water companies in the Republic of Kenya, they have one issue that is common amongst all, and it is non-revenue water, Mr. Speaker. They say there are leakages, they say people are doing illegal connections, and they're losing a lot of water, Mr. Speaker, because of lack of use intelligent systems in running these water companies. Although, Mr. Speaker, we have also come to learn that non-revenue water is also a leeway for those water companies to loot and to steal. Because, Mr. Speaker, when they charge for water and they cannot, for sure, when the audit reports are done, tell where that water went to. Of course, it tells you that probably they have stolen the money that they charged the unsuspecting users, Mr. Speaker. So for us to avoid those companies stealing the public money, for us to prevent the water from leakages, this motion, if well put in place, and the mandated department is able to come up with the right policy, I believe we are going to save a lot when it comes to leakages and loss of water. Mr. Speaker, I happened to visit Israel when I was an MCA some time back. And Mr. Speaker, they recycle water, even water that has been used in toilets. They recycle them. It goes underground for about 400 days. By the time it comes out, it's clean water. Some people drink it. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm not telling people to drink water. I wouldn't even trust that process for now, that the water that is used to flush toilet is coming back to me for me to drink. No, I wouldn't support that. But what they did for people who are a bit skeptic like myself, in your house you have two water pipes. One is white and one is purple. The white one is clean water that is coming from the source, natural water. The purple one is recycled water. So that tells you can use it to wash your clothes, you can use it to clean, but it's still, if you want to drink it, it's still okay, but they're giving you that opportunity. So, Mr. Speaker, we can borrow some leave from such a country that has put a lot of investment in recycling water. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, for people to understand what it means for to have water scarcity. And that's why probably I was proposing the Holidays Amendment Act, Mr. Speaker. You know, nowadays they are calling me Senator wa Sherehe or Senator wa Maholidays. You know, I was proposing that for people to have enough time to visit other counties in this country. You go to Marsabit and you see what they go through to get water. You go to Ajir, you go to those landlocked counties, and you see what they go through to get water. We have just been told here by the Senator of Tana River that they have water scarcity is an issue in that county. If you do not visit those places, you might not understand what those people are going through. So, Mr. Speaker, it's also part of education and awareness in our schools. Let them visit those places and see what people are going through, so that whenever somebody has been given an opportunity to use water, you will use it knowing that somebody somewhere is having a water shortage. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Amatinga said, even when you're brushing your teeth, by the time you brush the upper jaw, the lower jaw, the left, the right, the water is running. You know, sometimes educate people. When you're brushing, first of all, switch off. And then when you're done, then you can run the water. It is small things that require culture change, small things that requires awareness, and small things that requires education. And Mr. Speaker, as I sit down, we were actually arguing or asking ourselves here with the Senator for Bungoma, water is life, Mr. Speaker. And when you see, you go to the supermarkets, you see a liter of water is going for 100 shillings, Mr. Speaker. We want to say water is life, and water is a right, fundamental right for any human being. Yet it is costly more than a liter of petrol for those people who drive, Mr. Speaker. So it's something also we need to check as a country, whether we should do a lot of subsidies for this so that water can be available and clean water for everyone. If you look at those water bowsers that go to Kibra, go to some places also in Kiambu where there's no water, a jerrycan of about 20 liters is from 20 shillings to 50 shillings, Mr. Speaker. If that is to say, that means a liter is about 3 bob. If our people are drinking that water that is going for about 3 or 4 shillings a liter, why can't the same water now be on the shelves? So that we can have the same water our people are drinking, not to have water that is for upper class and water for lower class, Mr. Speaker. So these are some of the things that we need to discuss as a country so that we can bring equality and equity among our people, and especially when it comes to water. So, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion, and I do support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Abbas Sheikh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to support the motion. Actually, having intelligent systems for water management is a very crucial thing in this country. You know, this is a country that is water scarce. We have a water deficiency. If you go in most parts of the country, there is no water available. And especially in Nairobi now, as it is, the city is growing. And we are depending mainly on water bowsers. And of course, we don't know how safe that water is, but we believe that those guys, water bowser owners will give us safe water. However, the best systems is actually to have the piped water. In every world, everywhere you go, if you go to most of the cities, you see rivers flowing across cities. And when you see those rivers, actually the rivers are very clean. It's purified. There are systems that have been put in place to at least get clean water right from the source. And currently, if you see in Nairobi, what is going on through the kind of rivers that's flowing in Nairobi, they're more or less of sewage and sewers. And the same water is actually being used by many people who cannot afford water in other, for the domestic use. Honorable Speaker, I think it is actually very necessary to have systems that is able to purify water, that are able to conserve water, because we need, if you go to homes, as you have seen it, water is actually wasted so much, and we don't even have the water itself. Nairobi very soon will be, at least, most of them, most people are now drilling boreholes. Now we're even depleting the underground water. So the subsurface water is actually depleted. It is scarce. The forest is being depleted. We are cutting all our trees, such that, even the water, the trees is actually helping to at least give us a better environment. Even the water that flows through the forest is actually verified by the trees. The carbon monoxide is verified, being removed, and the water comes clean. Therefore, I think if you have the system there, we need to, we'll be able to have clean water in this place. Actually, not only having water, the system and intelligent systems, We don't even have the water now. This is the country actually becoming water is becoming a problem. If you go to my place, every 3 months, we're working water tracking. And you know, this time we had a very good rainfall, but there was no water harvesting. The water is just actually drained. Conservancy measures. So it's not only having intelligent systems for water use, but also we need to have water conservation. We need to conserve the rainwater. We need to have water harvesting systems for every building, so that at least we can be able to minimize the water that we're using from from aquifers and from the rivers. Because if you have tanks and big tanks, and then we can be able to capture the raindrops, the rains that have been harvested, then we'll be having more water in Nairobi, and we'll be able to have more water. As it is, actually, water is a very essential and it's alive, actually. It's commodity, and therefore, even actually, we need to now even to incorporate in our curriculums in schools, that we must be able to teach our young ones the essential of having and conserving water. It's not only having the system, but also conservation is very important. Water harvesting is actually a very important thing. I know we have an institution, water harvesting institution, one of the parastatos, but of course I don't know what they do normally, because everybody should be compelled to harvest water in his house or a house. Because if you don't do that, then this country will not be able to have self-sufficient water. We cannot be able to sustain ourselves in using the waters. Honourable Speaker, I think one other thing I've been hearing is that in the most developed countries, people don't waste water, even the sewers. It's been recycled. Sewage water is actually recycled and being used for other domestic uses. Even that some of them, like I've been told, like China, used even for drinking. So I think this country has a problem. We have the plan, we have the system. I mean the knowledge, but the problem is actually implementing the knowledges. I mean the programs for water harvesting and water purification and water systems is not in place. As a result, we are actually now very soon having water scarcity. Of northern Kenya, how things are actually. There are many animals who died because of lack of water. We have using irrigation. We don't even take care of our irrigation systems. We just waste a lot of water. Water is just run off. There's a lot of runoffs. So I think it's the high time that we should be able to serve. For us to have proper water intelligence systems, I think should be now a conditional and it should be compelled. This is actually, I want to commend Honorable Senator Ometinga. I think he's a water expert, an engineer. I think we need to have this bill to be at least adopted, and it will have a compelled, and then it must be a mandatory for every household and every place, institutions must be able to harvest their own water and have at least water reservoirs, and at least water is purified, and then we have the intelligence, of water use, that at least the system can be used to at least know the amount of water being used in every household. And then there should be a penalty for water misuse. With those few remarks, I beg to support.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mugeni Okongo.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support this motion by my good friend, Honorable Wahome Wamatinga. Mr. Speaker, if you travel to many countries, water is actually a security issue. It's a security matter. If you go to Spain, where they store water is a security zone. You cannot even overfly that region because countries appreciate that without water there is no life. If we have no water, Mr. Speaker, there is no life. The River Nile, Mr. Speaker, the agreements are around the Nile Basin, the 9 countries that share the River Nile. And if you threaten, the source of River Nile with even pollution, it can be an act of war. That's how important water is to many countries. And so, Mr. Speaker, when a motion like this is brought to the floor, it's a matter that we should take very seriously. So I want to thank Senator Wahome Wamatinga for thinking about this matter and for bringing this matter to the attention of the House. Mr. Speaker, if you studied your professional career in Nairobi, you know what water scarcity can subject you to. People who live in this city, many of the residential areas, including renowned estates like Umoja, some parts of Donholm, Dandora, they have intermittent shortage of water. At times, they go for 1 week with no water. And you ask yourself, these are not people living in the rural areas where there are rivers to go and draw water. They get water from vendors, and you really can't vouch for the safety of that water or cleanliness. So when we talk about issue of ensuring that everybody who resides in Nairobi should get water, it's actually a human rights issue. So I fully support, Mr. Speaker, the issue that has been brought to the floor, and want to make the following contribution. First, Mr. Speaker, the government must stop this idea of not supporting water companies like Nairobi. You know, the company that is serving Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, does not get any financial support from government. If you read the current budget, you will see that there is no budgetary allocation to support Nairobi water. Yet, Mr. Speaker, the last time we did support for water in Nairobi, in terms of dam supply and the likes, was in 1980, when the population of Nairobi was 2.3 million. As we speak today, we are doing 5.6 million. And yet we expect Nairobi Water Company, Mr. Speaker, to enhance water supply using the revenue that they collect. It's not possible. It's not possible, Mr. Speaker. So this is a matter that we should highlight as a Senate. The last time we discussed this matter in the last session, the requirement for Nairobi River to regenerate the sewer lines in Nairobi so that you kill this issue you have raised on this motion of pollution. They need 19 billion. And how can we as a government not be able to give Nairobi Water Company 19 billion to ensure that they connect everybody with sewer so that we deal with this issue of pollution? And they have made that request. You know, Mr. Speaker, they told us that some of the pipes supplying water, and maybe that's what you take, were laid down in the city in 1932 by Muzungu. Up to today, those are the same pipes that are supplying water to the residents of Nairobi, you know. And all they need is just 10B so that they can regenerate those pipes so that when what you get in the house, in your own, in your respective houses, is not polluted. Because, Mr. Speaker, they told us some of these pipes have cracks. Some of them, they are sewer that break and they run through some of these areas where they pass through. So they end up going to the pipes that supply you water. So when the water comes to your house, it's already polluted. The problems of Nairobi River is because of broken sewer lines. That sewer breaks, it finds its way to Nairobi River. That's why Nairobi River is one of the most polluted river around. So we really must urge the government to set aside funds to support Nairobi Water Company that is taking care of 5.6 million Kenyans so that we can have clean water in our houses, Mr. Speaker. If you go to other countries in Europe, Mr. Speaker, you are told tap water is safe. You can drink tap water. You go to Australia, they tell you don't need to buy bottled mineral water. You draw clean water from the tap, drink it, and you're okay. In this country, if you try, you'll be hospitable with the typhoid and other waterborne diseases. So these are matters that, honestly speaking, Mr. Speaker, should prick the conscience of the government of the day, so that we give Nairobi Water Company the money they need. It's just, in totality, it's just 29 billion shillings. And you have a healthy population. I mean, you have clean water. You are able to have a sewer that is working and serving almost, it may not serve everybody, but a good number of Nairobians will have a sewer connection. You imagine if you live in these estates I've mentioned in Umoja, and you get water once a week. You live in a flat in Umoja, and you get water supply once in a week on a Sunday, maybe at night. I mean, where do you even store the water? You live in an apartment, so you don't have open space where you can even put a tank. We need to care about these underprivileged members within our society, so that they also enjoy the independence that we got from Mzungu in the 1960s. Mr. Speaker, I cannot agree more with the proposals that have been made on recycling, water recycling. The plumbing system should have a component of water recycling. I'm told, I think that senator for Kiambu, who mentioned that he traveled to Israel. I'm told in Israel, when you flush water in a toilet, it is recycled and reused again. So they try to ensure they minimize any wastage of water. And then you will be surprised. Israel is a desert, but they still use the same water for irrigation. And they supply fruits to many countries using irrigation. So I fully support that we need to do something on plumbing works, so that component of recycling is incorporated, so that we minimize wastage of water. When you flush your toilet, that water should serve another purpose. And finally, Mr. Speaker, we created a body that is supposed to take care of our environment, but is doing very little. Doing very little, Mr. Speaker. You find that there are many people who are doing illegal business, washing cars next to our rivers, discharging oil to the river. And NEMA is doing nothing. The Nairobi County government is doing nothing. And we are polluting these rivers, Mr. Speaker, knowing that there is somebody downstream who is depending on that water for household use. We are being very insensitive, Mr. Speaker. I hope that at the opportune time, we will also put these bodies to task. We need, NEMA should tell us, what are they lacking? They get financial allocation in every budget cycle. What are they doing, Mr. Speaker? The Nairobi County government, on approval of buildings, if you walk along Kericho Kubwa, people have built almost to the bank of the river. The riparian area has now become a private property, and that is not right. So I support this motion by Kimani Wahome Wamatinga, and I really hope that the government, once we pass this motion, and I'm sure we all support it, the government will take it up and put in place some measures that will address the issues that have been raised in this motion. So, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senators, I again interrupt debate to give a communication from the chair. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 72 students accompanied by 6 teachers from St. Hannah's Secondary School in Nairobi County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Paul Thangwa, I don't know if you'll welcome them as a neighboring county.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. As you have rightly said, I'm the Senator for Kiambu County, call myself the Miracle Senator. I welcome the students to come and see how we deliberate in this house. This is all where the decisions are made running this country. We make laws that are assented by the President, and when we do so, the laws becomes in place. I know many people ask whether this is the upper house or the lower house. It is the Senate, where it is mandated to check on the interests of our counties and our county government, which is 47 counties. So we welcome you here and thank you very much for visiting, and also thank your teachers for giving you an opportunity to come and see how we interact. We're not like this, you know, it's almost empty. This is the government side, this is the opposition side. So you can see at least the people in the government, they're working. So thank you very much and welcome.
Senator Danso Mungatano, you wish to welcome the students? Would you please take a minute?
Yes, 1 minute, Mr. Speaker. My 2 daughters have passed through that school. So I have an attachment, I have some Mungatana, Amara Mungatana, and now I have a little girl in primary school by the name of Ariana Mungatana. It's a good school. It has done very well. It has trained very good students, and St. Hannah's, keep it up. We are working hard. Keep up the spirit, and when you come out, come and join us. I hope some of you will become senators and you'll come help us build this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. We resume debate. Senator Okech Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through your honor, may I also just take a minute of my time just to welcome the students from St. Anne into this house. We love to see students in this house. My name is Senator Eddie Gisheru Okech, and I'm the senator for Migori County. I am sure Migori County has got some students in your school as well. Given that my county has got high affinity for learning in good schools like yours. And you are the future of our country. Some of us here, especially somebody like Mungatana, is soon leaving the stage for people like you to come and fill in. So enjoy this space to the issue that the Senate is the upper house, to the extent that we don't have this battle that you see in the National Assembly of who is the superior than the other. We are a house of very good reason, and actually today we are not all of us in because one of our staffers passed on, and most of the senators have gone to that funeral, but next time you'll get all of us. So we welcome you. And it's good that you've come and are debating a very important matter of conservation, which takes me to my debate. Today we are debating about what Senator Matinga has brought on the floor about water conservation and how we can be able to improve our housing code, actually. You know, making sure that as we build new houses in the country, we can be able to start having facets or a plumbing system that can be able to ensure that we conserve water. And I think that Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very, very important time and a very, very, very important motion that I want to congratulate my colleague, Senator Matinga, for bringing it on the floor, because what we see in the country today, there are 3 areas that I want to talk about very fast. And the first thing is just the National Housing Code. Our National Housing Code, Mr. Speaker, hasn't been changed for such a long time. And I think that this debate brings me to even start thinking creatively whether Senator Matinga can consider some amendments that can compel a total overhaul on our National Housing Code. Because our National Housing Code does allow for a free tendering on the issue of plumbing fixtures. We have almost a free market whereby you can choose low flow plumbing fixtures such as shower heads, faucets, and flush valves that ordinarily can be able to save water. So it's a more issue of the National Housing Code that we need to look at. But most importantly, this bill also comes at a time when the national government is just relinquishing some of the water companies from the national bodies to the county management offices. I've been in the CPIC, which is the Committee on Public Investment, together with my sister, Senator Miraj here. And one of the things that we've been dealing with is basically the issue of water management. And when you look at what is happening in these water bodies and water companies, like what Senator Morgan has talked about here, Mr. Speaker, the one constant issue that we keep on fighting about with the governors and with the MDs that are managing water bodies and water companies in the counties that have been transferred to the counties is the issue of non-revenue water. And this issue of non-revenue water, Mr. Speaker, when you look at the causative factors, almost 60% of it is about physical losses. These physical losses are basically losses around metering of the waters, around the plumbing systems, and around the piping system, rectification that do not allow for this conservation to happen. Mr. Speaker, if today you look at the way our oil pipelines are managed, we have serious smart meters that can be able to detect when oil leakages are happening in our pipeline systems. Yet, if you were to rank the importance of the commodity of water vis-a-vis the commodity of oil, you will rank water very highly. So this is high time that we need to start thinking about our entire metering systems, not only that are limited to housing, but also the component of rectification of water systems in the counties and nationally in constructions in such a way that we allow this innovative, very brilliant proposal by Senator Wamatinga to be able to ensure that this kind of plumbing fixtures are created in our systems and make it a requirement, honestly, almost like an omnibus bill that will also be able to ensure climate change and conservation is done to the maximum. So with this, Mr. Speaker, I think this is one of those straightforward bills that we should not even belabor about. We should just give Wamatangi a pat on the back with a serious support like what I'm doing now. And my brother, congratulations. We are very proud of you and your country should be proud of you for thinking this kind of intervention to be able to help us have conservation of this kind of water. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that if this was to be implemented, even if I haven't done the statistical analysis, I am sure we can be able to save almost 45% of the water usages that we are seeing in the counties today. So, Mr. Speaker, I support and I congratulate the Senator for bringing this on the floor. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wafula Wakoli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to my senior brother's presentation in the House today. Mr. Speaker, in the villages where we come from, it is so sad to see women wake up very early in the morning by free with jerrycans and pots on their heads, leaving behind their conjugal and entertainment roles to go fetch water downstream many kilometers away. And this is because government has failed to step forward and minimize this turmoil that men and ably talented men ought to be enjoying. Honorable Speaker, members are laughing, but it's a serious matter out here.
What is your point of order, Eddie?
Mr. Speaker, you know we are in a very progressive country, and this is just, I'm rising under Standing Order 105, which is just basically about substantiating some of this statement, Mr. Speaker. Is the Senator for Bungoma, Senator Wakoli, in order to suggest that all women in our country, Mr. Speaker, who are waking up every day in the morning to go and struggle and get water, if they are not going to get water, the only thing they will be doing is conjugal entertainment, Mr. Speaker. Is this in order for the women of this country? Or does this even borderline some sexist statement that, does not honor women in our country, Mr. Speaker? Can you substantiate that statistics with respect to women in this country, Mr. Speaker?
Honorable Speaker, I believe there are things that are naturally explainable by virtue